Once again, if you've been reading the Texarkana Gazette, there's been a lot in there about the Texarkana Phantom Ghost Walking Tours. And we're thinking, what's going on with that? They've got them everywhere. They've got them in Jefferson. Everywhere you go, they seem to have some ghost tours. But a few months ago, we had Tracy Prather on talking about the renovation of the Hotel Grimm, or the Grimm Hotel, whatever you want to call it. And she is the one that's conducting these ghost tours, and I guess she got involved because of the Grimm and all that. But anyway, she's here today, and she's going to tell us all about the tours. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, it's so good to have you back so soon. Okay, how did you come up with this idea about doing ghost tours in Texarkana?
Well, like you, I had been to Jefferson, I had been to San Antonio, Hot Springs, Shreveport, and I always take the ghost tours, not because I'm a big believer in ghosts, but because I love the historical value, the history that they
all got
they all tell.
History to them.
Right,
yeah.
And a lot of times, like in Jefferson, I'll go home, take a name in my head, go home, and I'll end up researching it myself. I've always been into history. I love genealogy. So it kind of went hand in hand. I was on the museum systems board, and I thought that would be a great fundraiser. It's a way to bring people downtown.
Okay, had you heard before that there were ghosts in some of the buildings locally?
I had been told by some city employees that the Texarkana City Hall had some strange things that happened in it. And I really thought it was an urban legend. I really didn't believe they had said that a judge had hung himself. And I really did not believe that it had happened. So when we started talking about the ghost walking tour, that was one of the buildings that I definitely wanted to look into.
The Texas City Hall.
Right.
Okay.
And I started doing the research, and sure enough, it wasn't a judge, it was a federal appellate clerk who hung himself in the fourth floor. And they talk about the rustling of papers, footsteps, things like that in City Hall. I talked to the janitorial staff yesterday, and they were wonderful, talking about just the strange things.
And they mentioned a lot of strange things that have happened.
Yes, they did. And they believe that this fellow is still hanging around. A lot of the city employees do.
Wow. Now, what about other places in Texarkana? What are some of the other ones that you do on the tour? And first of all, how do you conduct this tour? I know you've had a lot of people sign up. You've been selling out of tickets, right?
I keep selling out of tickets.
How many tickets do you sell for a particular tour?
We've limited it to 30 because I don't know that I could handle. I went on the tour in Jefferson last weekend just to kind of refresh my memory on what she was doing, and she had 88 people show up for the tour.
Wow.
And that's too much for me to be able. I don't feel like I can project loud enough for everybody to hear me. I don't think you get as personalized of an experience. So we've limited it to 30 people, and we thought we would do it the first weekend of every month throughout the summer, and we'd just have a little small fundraiser. And then we sold 300 tickets before the first tour even starts.
How much are the tickets?
They are $15 each.
It's very reasonable. Okay.
We hope so.
Yeah. And where do you meet?
We meet at the Ace of Clubs house.
And where do you end up?
At the Ace of Clubs house.
So you begin and end at the Ace of Clubs house.
Right.
Okay, so you leave is it supposed to be haunted?
We have a 20-year employee who has been there for 20 years, and I think she knows everything about that building. And she says she doesn't hear anything but an old house settling. We've never done any kind of investigation or anything like that on the building, and right now we're just happy to have the Ace of Clubs house.
Right, to begin and end.
Right.
Right, where do you go from there?
We leave from there and we go to the Avenue Hotel, the Foreman Building, the
Where's
Grimm
the
Hotel.
Avenue Hotel?
The Avenue Hotel is between Joe's Pizza and the Foreman Building.
Okay.
Yes, and it was a hotel upstairs.
See, I didn't know that. That must have been before my time.
It probably
I didn't
was.
think anything happened before my time, but maybe something did.
All kinds of stuff. I really thought that Texarkana was a little bit of a rough and wild town today. It is completely calm. Nothing today compares with what happened.
I know a bunch of not any of the paranormal things, but a lot of the other things that used to go on in Texarkana.
And for me, I'm the historical junkie. I love the history of what happened.
Right.
And so I've kind of based the tour on that, and from the things that I've heard, picked out certain locations and found the newspaper articles and the documentation to support.
So anybody that's just interested in history, I mean, even if you don't see a ghost,
Very much so.
You're going to learn a lot, and anyone that's a history buff. Okay, so you go to the Avenue Hotel. What's there?
I can't tell you everything.
Oh, okay.
There are reports of a little girl crying upstairs and footsteps.
Okay.
And then that kind of ties in with the history that we've discovered. So we're really not sure what's going on there, but it is kind of a fascinating story. The Foreman Building, basically the same stories.
Where's the Foreman Building?
The Foreman Building is the one-story building that's across the street from the Grimm. It's where the Harrelson Law Firm
Right.
is.
Okay.
And it used to be a 3-story building. And something happened to the top 2 floors. And it was not a nice event in Texarkana, but it is part of our cumulative history. And with a lot of these stories, as we continue on, we go to the corner of Bi-State. And if there is a haunted location in Texarkana, theoretically it should be the Bi-State building, which I've heard nothing about any kind of ghosts or anything in Bi-State. But that block...
Well, it's a brand new building, though, I mean, comparatively speaking.
Right, but when you talk to these folks who do ghost hunting research, they will talk about how the land itself can hold a person there. And on the block of Bi-State is
Well,
where
when you're behind bars, yeah.
that might be right. It's fascinating because that was the Rough and Wild block. When you start looking at all the research, the Paragon Saloon fell there.
There was a billiard hall there.
There were lots of billiard halls there. And once, it's kind of interesting how it came around. That was probably our wildest block with the most murders, the most gambling, all the bad things that could have happened and did. And it was torn down, and Bi-State was put there. And in a strange way, there's some kind of circle of continuity there that I love.
What about the train station?
We do have some stories about the train station, mainly about the yards and about what has happened out there. I don't have anything specific on the train station itself yet, but I'm continuing to do research. That train station was built in the 30s, so I've gotten up to 1928. I've got a couple of stories from the 50s, but really I'm trying to stay away from anything from 1950 forward.
Right.
Just because I don't want to offend any families.
Right, and it could touch some people.
And I do have some friends who are reviewing names that we talk about to make sure they don't have
that's a good
living people here.
Right.
From the train station, we go behind Bi-State. We come up the side of Bi-State over to Silver Moon, and there's a really interesting story with Silver Moon that we're still continuing to dig out more information on. We go up to the City Hall, back over in front of the Perot, where my husband, I know they do a ghost tour, and I'm very much respectful for what they do, so I haven't shared anything that was on their ghost tour, but my husband has something that happened to him in the Perot that he shares. And then we go back to the Ace of Clubs house. We have about 12 stops along the way.
How long does it take?
About an hour and a half, depending on how many questions are asked. And I try to, as we're walking, talk about some of the other locations in town, like the Bowie County Health Department. And we were there yesterday. That location is in the old Jameson Elementary School. And before it was Jameson Elementary School, there was a funeral home there. And before the funeral home was there, on the 1888 bird's eye map of Texarkana that was hand-drawn from a guy in a balloon, the cemetery, Sacred Heart Cemetery, appears to be on the corner of 12th and Spruce, where the health department is now. And I really had thought all these years that the artist just, he was in a hot air balloon sketching out our town. Maybe he got the street wrong. And then we found some evidence that shows that those graves that were at 12th and Spruce were disinterred and moved over to Sacred Heart. And
so it was
in the 1800s when that happened, usually the headstones were moved, if there were headstones at all, and maybe the more wealthy people were moved, but the poor folks and the African Americans were not moved. And so that's kind of the interesting history of that building. They didn't realize the history of their building, not necessarily all of it, until we started doing the research. They had always talked about a girl in a frilly pink dress that would roam the halls after hours, hearing a school bell, hearing children laughing and playing, having things in the kitchen.
Now, this has been since the health has been there, right?
Yes. Excuse me. Having things, and this has been in pretty recent years, having things in the kitchen fly off of the refrigerator. I mean, there were some really interesting stories, and nothing really scary, just it's after hours, and you hear a school bell, and you hear kids playing and giggling.
It would kind of get your interest.
Right, and the janitor of the building was wonderful. We talked to him yesterday, and he was like, the spirits don't bother me. I have the Lord in my heart. He said, but they get annoying sometimes, so I wear earplugs when I'm cleaning. So apparently they're loud. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, now, what about at Berman Farr? I know in the paper last week or the week before last there was some images that you could see in the windows. Mm-hmm. Did you see that?
I had not seen that.
And you don't go on the Arkansas side
No,
yet?
well, we do a little bit on the Arkansas side, and we may as interest continues in this.
Seems to be a lot of interest.
Yes, that's what's amazed us all. As interest continues in this, I don't see a reason why we couldn't go further onto the Arkansas side. I am limited on how far people want to walk, but I'll walk all over town.
It's good exercise. Well, B
Yes.
Street has some history, supposedly,
Yes.
and of course this used to be a funeral home.
Yes.
But we don't, I've never heard anything. Have you, Burns? Strange things happen, but...
Strange things always happen when
Okay.
cameras are around.
Now, I understand yesterday you were at the Grimm.
Yes.
And tell us what happened there. Was it on the tour?
Yes, it is on the tour. We do not, at this point, go inside any buildings. That's been something that everybody wants, and we are working with a couple of building owners to go inside.
So you don't go in like the Avenue Hotel? Or
Not yet.
Okay, you just stand out front.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So
Unless-
nobody gets to experience.
Well, we're working on it.
Okay.
I have a meeting tomorrow, actually, with a couple of owners trying to see what we could do and how far they're willing to let us. Because you have to remember there's a liability issue.
Correct.
And right now, the Grimm Hotel is in rough shape. On the inside, it's restorable, definitely. It's structurally okay.
And that's
There's-
still all on go?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
However, there's broken. I go in hiking boots because there's broken glass everywhere.
Well, it's just not safe
No,
to
it's
take
not.
anybody in.
Not
Well,
yet.
what were you doing in there yesterday then?
Yesterday, the city of Texarkana, Texas, has brought in twice now a paranormal group from Shreveport, and it's a hairdresser and her husband that's a police officer. I mean, these are people who are educated people who, in their spare time, they like to go see if they can find evidence of ghosts. So we'd gone into the Grimm before, and they had captured a couple of EVPs that were interesting, and that's they set up a recorder, they ask questions, they go home and listen to the recorder, and things that you don't hear while you're there sometimes appear on the tape. And I've worked for a long time with audio, and I'm fairly good at being able to identify when sound waves are fake or not fake, and what they caught looked right
What's
to me.
EVP?
I don't. I think it's like electronic voice phenomenon,
Okay.
something like that.
That sounds good.
They
good.
say all kinds of stuff. They hold meters. I stand there. There have been a couple of strange things that we caught, but for me, I've always been very much a skeptic when it comes to ghosts. I love the history of it. I'm curious about ghosts. But I can always seem to try to reason away what I'm seeing in the pictures or what I haven't heard anything, but except on tape. But there's always for me an explanation until yesterday.
Tell us what happened yesterday.
Yesterday we went into the Grimm, and we were there for quite a while, and we had been in the back, and they were trying to provoke someone to come forward because their little lights had been going off on their meters. They had been asking yes or no questions, and then it stopped. And there's these meters are supposed to register electromagnetic waves, and there's no electricity on in the building. There's no water running in the building. It should be nothing. And they'll ask a question, and a little meter lights up, and it's really a little freaky when you see it happen. And they'll ask yes or no questions, and it looks like it's responding. And then it stopped. So we were trying to call the ghost back into the room, and I started speaking, and I was like, they're going to come in here and they're going to clean up this place, and you're going to have to find a new place to live. And I was trying to kind of provoke him, and I was playing along with the ghost folks, and we got ready to leave, and we packed up all the equipment, and we were walking toward the front door, and I happened to be the last in line, and there were only 4 of us, and I felt something on the back of my neck, and I reached back. I hadn't gotten all the way back there yet. I had reached back I thought it was a bug, if you want to know the truth, and I felt something take just a few hairs, just enough of like 4 or 5 hairs, and yank, and it yanked hard enough that my head kind of went like this, and hurt. When you get just a couple of hairs, it really hurts. And I yowled.
What did they say?
They laughed at me.
Okay.
I was like, it's time to go now.
Yeah, let's go.
Time for me to go.
Kind of made a believer out of you, or
Well,
less skeptical than you were.
To be honest, I've spent the last 24 hours really thinking about it.
I bet you have.
And trying to find out, I've thought of, was I wearing a shirt that it could have
Caught on or something,
my hair
yeah.
could have gotten caught on, and I can't find a reasonable explanation yet.
Well, Tracy, I could talk about this, just the history and everything, but if somebody would like to get tickets, how do they do that?
They can log on to Facebook, and they can go to the Phantom Ghost Walking Tour website, and that'll give you a link to where you can order tickets, or you can always call the Texarkana Museum System.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing this with us, and we're going to get an update in a few months or so.
Yes, you will.
All right. Keep it here. There's still 2 more segments to come that you're not going to want to miss.